Salve Comites. My name is Reese. I am the current NJCL president, and welcome back to Convention 101, which is a series where we're going over all things convention. Today we are going over elections. And I apologize if the light is a little weird. The sun is coming through my window, Okay, so what are elections? Well, elections are not only for the future board, so if you want to be an officer like me, but also for things like amendments, so changes to our constitution. It happens throughout the week, and there are a ton of different ways that you can participate, which we're going to get into now. So, one of the ways is by being a voting delegate, which means that you get to actually cast the vote for the future board and for amendments. To be a voting delegate, it's different for each state. And in order to have a vote, there are also certain requirements, such as bringing 2 delegates to NOMCOM, which we'll talk about in a second, or Nominations Committee, as well as Amendment Committee. And then you have to have 10% of your delegation at Candidates Open Forum. Again, we'll talk about this all in a couple of slides. A note is that you can still go to events. You can still go to Amendment Committee, Open Candidate Forum, meet the candidates, all sorts of events. Even if you are not a voting delegate, your voice is super duper important when it comes to choosing the future of our board. And so when it comes time for voting fellowship, which we'll talk about later, which essentially is when you get to talk to the rest of your state about what you think should be with the amendments and the future board, this is a great time for you to use your voice and go to those events for that. Another way that you can participate is you can be a candidate. You can run for office. To be chosen as a candidate for your state, again, it varies per state. For example, in Virginia, we fill out a application, whereas I know in California, you actually give a speech at convention. So for that, check in with your state chairs, check in with your websites for each of your states and stuff like that. Then the third way is you can be a supporter and you can be a helper. When it comes to running an election, you can't be a candidate alone. You really rely on your state and your delegation. And so being a supporter, seeing where you can help out is always something super duper fun to just take part in. Okay, I brought up a ton of events earlier. We're going to go over them now and sort of the roadmap to being a candidate. So it starts out with Nominations Committee. This is where candidates get nominated from their state, and with a co-chair or a sponsor, you need to bring somebody with you. And this is also where you give your first speech. There are a couple of speeches that you give as a candidate, and this is your first one. So this is when you officially run. You can see it right over here. This is our current editor. We also have amendment committee. This is called AmendCom. Nominations committee is usually called NomCom. And that's where you learn about the amendments that are coming out this year, seeing if you're going to vote on them, and a great time to ask questions. So this also happens. Then we actually have right here, this is dinner with the candidates, and it is a great time once you become elected, or not elected, nominated, you have a dinner with all of your fellow candidates, as well as the Constitution Chair and the parliamentarian, as well as current officers, if they're free. It is an amazing time where you get to just meet the people that you are running with. Running for convention is such a special experience, and one of the best parts is that you're not doing it alone. We really foster a wonderful community where you value everyone around you, even the people that you're running with or running against. And so this is one of the first steps for that, and it is wonderful. After Nominations Committee, and only after NomCom, are you allowed to campaign and allowed to do sort of social media, websites, all of that sort of stuff gets to get posted. You can see an example right here. Next, we have a lot of different events. To find the exact order for this year, I highly recommend that you go to the campaign corner, which you'll see later, and the tentative schedule. So next up here, this picture we have is General Assembly, or GAs. At this third General Assembly, candidates will give another speech. So this is your second speech that you will give. Usually they're very similar to your first one. It's just a little bit different time constraints. So this is where you will give your second speech. Take a deep breath. You're going to be fine. And everyone is so supportive of you. Remember, when you run, everyone's being supportive of you. We just want to see you do your best. So take a deep breath. Give your amazing speech. We can't wait to hear what you're going to say. Okay, so those are these pictures. After, there is Meet the Candidates, or MTC, which you can see right here. Meet the Candidates is when all of these voting delegates and convention goers, JCLers, will come up to you and ask questions. Usually you will bring some form of poster. It could be a trifold, it could be a poster right here, it could be just a couple of things. This is one of our past editors. And you can bring all of your campaigning stuff, your flyers, stuff like that, and you get to talk about your platform. Usually by the end of it, you'll have a really good elevator pitch and you really highlight everything that your campaign talks about. But this is when people can ask you questions, all sorts of stuff like that. You'll be beside your fellow candidates that you're running against, and it's really wonderful where you get to see what they're thinking about doing if they are elected. Okay. Next, we have open forum, which is very similar. It's right here. What happens is you get to sit beside your fellow candidates and you are asked a couple of questions. There are some that go to all of the candidates. There are some that will go specifically to your office, and the current officers will ask you questions, and then it will open up again to the floor. So anyone can ask you a question. Again, take a deep breath. It's really fun. It should be fun. Don't get super stressed out. Some of the questions are amazingly silly. Some of them are a bit more serious, but again, just take a deep breath and have fun. Okay. Then, after all of these events, which happen over a couple of days, so don't worry, it's not all at once, you have our voting fellowship. Voting fellowship kind of goes as follows. All of your states have fellowship every single night, but on voting fellowship, it happens in the middle of the day. All of the candidates, all of the states meet in their normal spots, and you talk only and specifically about the amendments that are getting passed and the candidates and who you want to be your future board. This is usually run by your state parliamentarians. They do an amazing job. We love the parlies. And it is a great time where you also get to highlight your voice. So again, I said if you could, you're totally allowed to go to meet the candidates. You're allowed to go to open forum, to nomcom, everything like that. Nomcom's a little bit harder since we do have set space. But this is where we get to hear what you want to say and that sort of stuff. The way that voting happens in your state during voting fellowship and the way that is run differs per state. So I'm not going to get into the specifics there. But that's kind of what happens. If you're a candidate, you will leave a little bit earlier and you will go and meet all of the other candidates. And before our General Assembly, you get to hear the results a little bit earlier. We want to make sure that our candidates aren't surprised in any way, positive or negative, in the face of everybody else. And we want to make sure that you bring a trusted adult and all of that sort of stuff. We really want to take care of you and make sure that this is a wonderful experience for you. So you do leave a little bit earlier to hear the results earlier. After that, you might be a future officer like me, and you get to have a dinner with the current officers. You get to do a couple more meetings and fun stuff like that. But yeah, that is sort of the very concise road to campaigning and all sorts of stuff like that. Now we're going to talk about what each officer does in a very condensed, short way. Okay, so we have editor. Our editor creates the Torch US. There are a couple of different issues throughout the year, and there are deadlines for that, but that is the main thing that our editor does. Then we have the historian. Our historian takes pictures at events such as game nights, Classicalia, stuff like that, and at the end of the year creates the scrapbook. In addition, they do things such as convention history records and stuff like that as well. Our parliamentarian conducts elections and updates and adds to the Constitution and manual. So things like amendments and elections, all the stuff we talked about today is right down the parley's lane. The parley also helps all of the other officers make sure that we're using good Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure when we talk about these amendments at our meetings. Our communications coordinator takes minutes at meetings, updates the NJCL website, and mainly communicates with other JCLers. The communications coordinator is part of the name. And usually your states will see it as either a webmaster or a secretary or a COCO. Next up, we have our second vice president, which organizes Spirit and Service at NJCL Convention, as well as works with the 1 VP on Classicalia and National Classics Week. Then we have our first vice president. I'm going to move myself up here for a little bit, who works on increasing membership, getting more JCL chapters, as well as working with our second VP on Classicalia and National Classics Week. So the two of them work really well together. Finally, we have the president, which is what I do. We run all of the meetings, oversee other officers, and help with convention planning. All of our lovely officers can do more. For example, I ran a Epistolai this year, and you can add to your campaign goals and all sorts of stuff like that. In addition, we do run group me's, so we work with our local and state officers, and these are just sort of the bare bones of what you do. So, yeah. Okay, if you have any questions and stuff like that and resources, here it is. So, resources. The campaign corner, which that QR code right there, will take you to the place in the facts where it has all sorts of stuff for running, such as the forms that you need to fill out if you want to run. There are 2 ways that you can run. The first one is pre-filing, and the second is running from the floor. In short, pre-filing, you fill out the form, you do it before the deadline, and you are going to automatically run. If you run from the floor, it depends on if we have states of emergencies and stuff like that. So I highly recommend, though, you look at the campaign corner or previous campaign corners, see what our officers are saying, what advice they have, see the more specific stuff about if you want to be a voting delegate, if you want to be a candidate, pre-campaigning and how you can't do it, and all sorts of stuff like that. And then amazing resources are your current and previous officers. You can email us with any questions that you have. We might not be able to answer them all, but just ask and see what we can say. If you have any other concerns, talk to our parliamentarian, which is parliamentarian@njcl.org, our constitution advisor, constitution@njcl.org, me, president@njcl.org, president@njcl.org, I apologize, or talk to your teacher or your state co-chairs. The final thing that I would say is run. I highly recommend that you do it. It is such an incredible experience just getting to run, not even being on the board. Being on the board has been an incredible experience as well. But the opportunity to run is super fun. I highly recommend it. And what I would say too is no matter what happens, it's a great experience. Something that someone told me that I find very valuable is that you can make an impact on the JCL in so many different forms, but also, if you lose an election, don't see that as your final one. You can always run again. You can always do stuff again. And yeah, I just highly recommend it. Try it out. You never know what's going to happen. And yeah, if you have any questions, as always, again, feel free to email me. I would be so glad to hear from you guys. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. So, well, I take komates and karate.